Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of
The Results Show.
The Results Show indeed. This evening we are joined again by the lovely Debra, all the way from a chilly Nashville in Tennessee. Is it getting any warmer there, or is it still chilly?
It actually is getting a little warmer, so maybe my heat is kicked on, so I hope so. I hope so.
That's good. Well, if you suddenly go all freezy, then it's either the fact that Zoom is frozen, or indeed you've succumbed to the sub-zero temperatures.
I have resilience, though. I've got my big coat with my hoodie and everything right on my lap.
I mean, this is the weird thing, because like the last time I was in Nashville, it was baking red hot, and I got some of the worst sunburn I've ever had in my life.
Yes.
Walking by the railway tracks, which you do as a country music fan. You've got to walk down the railway track.
You have a guitar and a gunny sack on your back just to complete the image.
And then now you're telling me it's like minus.
It's warming up a little bit. I think it's like 30 right now, which is just below freezing, so just below zero.
And do you have snow, or is it just ice?
It did snow here, and it snowed about 5 inches just before I flew here yesterday. So it's still on the ground.
Yeah. No.
But next week it'll probably be 50 or 60 degrees.
Oh, right.
Yes.
And all the snow will be gone.
So, but anyway, thank you very much indeed for joining us back here, because what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to have a look at because again, the whole point about the Results Show is not only to talk about the implementation of the technologies, but also to explore some new and upcoming technologies on the periphery and see how they integrate to basically just give us a larger and more effective toolbox. Because again, at the end of the day, that's the sort of thing that we want, isn't it? We want to, whether we're working on ourselves or we're working on others, we want to be able to get the results that we want. So it's almost like having the ultimate, bag of golf clubs,
Yeah, and it's also what we talked about in a previous episode, as far as like the difference between magician and wizard.
Yes.
What can we use to create tangible results?
Yes.
Now, I've known about HeartMath for a long time, around the idea of coherence between the three brains you've got in your head and the brain you've got in your heart. And Debra can fill us more in that. I've tested it out with technology. You know me, I'm a nerd.
You love sticking wires into things.
This included sticking wires into myself. And I had this idea that I'd be able to create coherence between my brains in my head and my heart by heart breathing and chanting. But I didn't want to just leave it as being a theory. So I bought EEG, electroencephalogram. I bought like a NeuroSky to check my brain stuff and all that kind of stuff. Bought all this kind of stuff, wired myself up with clips on my ears, whatever. And
yes, you can imagine him answering the door, looking like was it Doc Brown from Back to the Future, where he's got this foil helmet on. And so I'd wired myself up to all this kind of stuff, and then thought like, okay, right, heart breathe, chant, hakalau. I love hakalau.
Absolutely.
And what people say takes ages to be able to learn, which is this coherence between brain and heart. Immediate, right? And you can't deny it, you can't walk away from it, because it's on a computer, it's being measured scientifically.
The computer says yes.
This is the way it is. So I was convinced with that. And, I'm really busy. I'm doing all kinds of other stuff, as you know. So I never really took the study of HeartMath any further.
Yes.
but Debra has.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hand over to Debra now to explain this in a little bit more detail, because that's my that was my why on it.
Yeah.
That was a great why. It was a great why.
And how it integrates with NLP, how it integrates with Huna and all that, and how it. Well, Debra, over to you. I've talked too much now.
No, I think it's absolutely perfect. It's like just another puzzle piece that we can go to. So, just very quickly, when I'm working with any of my clients in coaching, whether it's a breakthrough, whether it's just a one-on-one, I will start with one of the HeartMath techniques. So HeartMath, just to clarify for a second, HeartMath is the name of the organization, the name of the institute, and under the name of the institute, HeartMath, there's various tools and techniques that they offer to help you build and sustain resilience. So in other words, putting you in a coherent state, which is not a reactionary state, where when we react to certain things, we often go to a place of regret, right? We overreact, we go to a place of regret where at effect, we're not a cause. So this gives you tools which are really, really simple, because we're breathing anyway, whatever breathing we're doing, to put us into a state of being where we're able to shift from the state we don't want to be in to reset into the state we either want to be in, need to be in, should be in, whatever words we're using there, and we don't have to Monday morning quarterback looking back on, what the heck did I do here? Now I have to get out of all of this stuff that I've done, and I'm open to so many more new challenges now that I wouldn't have had if I'd taken that breath. And the difference, with Huna and the heart breathing, and I love all those things. I do meditations with my CEO clients that love all that stuff. The difference is it's not the type of breathing you do, it's energy flows where attention goes. We're focusing on the heart. And the heart has its own system of energy. It was actually formed in the womb months before the brain was formed. So the heart sends more signals to the brain than the other way around. So if we're erratic, we're angry, frustrated, annoyed, pissed off, whatever those are, those states that we're in, those emotional states we're in, imagine the signal it sends up to the thalamus in the brain, which goes to the frontal lobe, where we make our decisions, and they're not too good. We say things we regret. We've done something we regret. We haven't paused before we react. So think of NLP. We're on the effect side of the equation. In Huna, we could have done some breathing to move our energies, and then this way we're doing it in one quick sweep to go from here to here, or to get to neutral, as I like to say. Then we can go from neutral. Okay, I now have a choice. Quantum physics, right? I'm right here. I could take this path or this path, and each path is going to create a different result.
This almost goes back to the whole Viktor Frankl thing, isn't it? Between stimulus and action, there is decision, and so this is kind of like a technique that allows you to make the right decision.
Correct. Yeah. And it only comes, of course, with practice, like everything. What are we practicing at? Getting more irrational, more overreactive, or are we practicing at getting our heart? Because as you said, David, the great thing about this, which my clients love, is that I can show them the technology, the EKG. Right? I can show them the heart rate variability. My husband has done this, and you've met my husband, David.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
He has come into me and said, my heart's pounding, and I'm, in this reactionary state and whatever, something to do with work. And I had him sit in front of, I have machines, but you don't need the machines, to be able to see what was going on in his internal world.
Right.
So you can actually visibly see in the moment, and I've used this with corporations, and but I'll share his story first. And he's sitting there getting his breathing to match, or his heart rate to match his breathing, where his heart signals went into a coherent state, not an incoherent state. And then he anchored in what that felt like. So he knew once he left the machine, because you're not walking around carrying the machine with you, that he knew when he felt coherent inside himself, that he was able to bring that back in that moment.
Cool. What Debra's talking about with anchoring is an NLP technique based on Pavlovian, or probably more correctly Twitmeyer's idea of the stimulus response pattern, where you go into a particular state and you create a particular stimulus, which might be just doing this, or might be clicking your fingers, and your neurology links the two things together. So once you've learned how to go into that state, whether it's about HeartMath or about Huna, then we can connect the two things together, and then boom, we're in that coherent state. We mentioned in a previous podcast, that CEO client of mine did a breakthrough session with me, and he measures everything with his watch and his, particularly sleep patterns. And literally, when we'd done the breakthrough session and he'd released the negative emotions, limiting decisions, etc., I can't remember the exact figures. I've got them in my Remarkable somewhere, but these are ballpark figures. He was measuring his REM sleep and his deep sleep, and they increased by almost 50%.
Yeah, I remember those stats, because it's like, and it also continued that way for months afterwards.
No, it was still there, and it was like a step change. And we, as you mentioned in that previous podcast, we all know how important sleep is.
Yes.
From a general health perspective.
Yes.
And we were talking as well on a previous podcast, and actually in between them, in terms of just the importance of state management, because we actually likened it to a shelf. So it's like it's almost like your state is the shelf on which all other techniques sit. Because if your shelf suddenly does that, then it doesn't matter what other techniques everything just goes sliding off onto the floor.
Yeah. I loved because I listened to that podcast, and I loved it when you brought up sleep, because lack of sleep is one of the biggest energy drains that we have. And so that's why doing some of the HeartMath techniques is so important, to lift our energy up, right? And what happens if we don't resolve things before we go to bed, such as, I think you said, by where are we putting things, what are we watching before we go to bed,
your sleep hygiene.
Yeah, sleep hygiene, exactly. It carries over into the next day. So we have a troubled sleep. And so these are some of the things that, the HeartMath techniques help with as well.
It's interesting, Debra, because we're recording this on January 13th. And
yes.
My dad passed away on January the 13th, 1986, I think it was. And I asked Pete to remind me to phone my mum, because I've phoned my mum every January the 13th ever since then.
Yeah.
Never missed a year, and I phoned her.
So that was like 38 now, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, it must be, or even more than that. And my dad, this is what triggered me, anchored. Mm-hmm. My dad always said, never go to sleep on an argument.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And his thing around it was, because you don't know whether the person is going to be around tomorrow.
Yes.
Right.
And I know, Debra, you've had an experience of that. Yeah. And that was just what, triggered me to go like, okay, yeah. Never, when you're saying, resolve stuff before you go to bed, before you go to sleep.
One of the things I always find fascinating, I'm going to say that again. One of the things I find fascinating about this, there we go, thank you.
You haven't got the microphone. That was the problem.
Yes, yeah, I'm not actually allowed to talk without this in my hand. It's like the talking stick that they have usefully in tribes. is the fact that, because with a lot of this stuff, you've kind of got what we call ancient wisdom and ancient practices and technologies. And the more that science kind of advances, the more that they suddenly realize that, they can actually start to back this up. So in terms of what you're talking about with the heart, they're actually starting to realize that it is actually a distributed processing center. Science basically used to think that, there you go, there's the head, there's a computer in there, that controls everything else.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, no, it's more like the internet, where there are, kind of like different servers and different processing points scattered around the body.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's like science is evolving to the point where it can prove what mystics have been saying for thousands of years.
Yes.
Go through.
But now, since it's a scientist who's saying it, then it's true. But when it was a mystic, it was all rubbish.
Well, it's easier to believe somebody who's got a white coat than somebody who's got like hair all over the place and, is speaking into your lapel. Not suggesting that mystics are like that.
Speaking to my lapel, what are you saying?
You
exactly?
just reminded me of a cute little true story that the last workshop I did it was actually a worldwide company. It was in Miami. And I asked for a volunteer to be hooked up to the machine for the heart rate variability. And they hadn't learnt one of the techniques prior to this. So the whole executive leadership team, being really great professionals that they were, as he's hooked up and they could see his heart rate variability on the TV screen behind him, they all started throwing, not literally, throwing stressful things at him. Right? Things that would cause stress mentally for him to start thinking. And you could see what happened to his heart rate variability. So I thanked them for giving him access to all that stress. I didn't even plan it that way. They just did it automatically. And then I taught them one of the techniques, and you could see his heart rate variability go to a coherent state.
Right.
It was phenomenal.
Yes.
So
brilliant.
What you're saying about the science triggered that with me, because that becomes it links like this to them. Aha. So I need to do that to take care of my internal world. We have the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, right? They can then see what's happening physically inside their bodies.
I think this actually comes back to one of the things that we were talking about in an earlier episode, which is compliance. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not just necessarily about saying, right, okay, here's some good advice or here's something that you need to do. It's about saying, how do you actually get them to take action?
How do you get the why?
How do you get the why? And also, how do you then say this is actually based on something that you will believe in? With some people, it's like, okay, there is like an ethereal spirit world and they are giving you these instructions. With other things, it's like, no, this is actually based on scientific facts. So it's about working out what everybody's levers are and then manipulating them in a win-win way to actually make sure that they do actually take the results which are going to give them, the actual, what they want.
Yeah, so that was with a M-wave, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
And there's also the personal ones, but most of the time I don't even get my clients to even use it. They can feel it inside their body themselves.
Yeah.
Which is great. So they don't have to carry anything around with them. But when I'm doing a workshop and showing people, and it's not on Zoom, it's in person, you can actually do demonstrations with that.
From an NLP point of view, depending on the person's preferred representational system and how they become convinced and all those kind of things. What I've found is like, wire somebody up to M-wave or whatever it is, and then they see it. You can't walk away from it and go, that didn't work.
Correct.
Because when I've used it, that's what I've used it for, particularly for people who are very scientifically, or from an NLP point of view, very AD oriented. My whole thing is, how do you convince somebody that something has changed? And that's where this stuff fits in, because you go like, look, you can see it on the screen.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's verifiable. It's like,
and you go, this isn't woo-woo.
No.
This is science.
yes.
Yeah.
And science is true,
It's always always up to them. Some people, you know, if the pain is not strong enough of them being filled with that anxiety, that stress, that worry, they will still, you know, stay or to choose to stay. It still is a choice. You can see it. I follow up with people when I've done my workshops, because all you have to do, you're breathing anyway, right?
Yep.
Why not breathe, you know, into a place that is going to shift your frontal lobe to be able to make a better decision where you're not rebounding continually. I don't want to rebound.
And, you know, the other thing with the frontal lobes is that, you know, as a speaker, presenter, trainer, if everything starts going into your frontal lobes, that's when you get brain freeze. It doesn't matter how much you prepared, whatever, suddenly your entire speech has disappeared from your brain.
Yes, because it's basically just trying to process all of this information. It's like it can't see the script because there's too much on the desk.
The reason it does that is because, you know, from a hereditary biological point of view, we used to get shut down of the frontal lobes to stop you thinking, because you needed to do that to stay alive.
Yes.
Correct. Be alert. Yep.
But, you know, when you're up in front of an audience doing a speech,
Hopefully you don't have to work on staying alive.
it doesn't, I mean, it depends. I've had some audiences where but it's a biological thing. That's the thing, a neurological thing.
Yes.
So,
isn't that saber-tooth tiger interesting?
yes,
Said nobody who survived ever.
in a room full of like 500 of them.
Yeah.
A pack. Hilarious. Are they a pack? I think they're a pack. A pack of saber-tooth. No, cyber-tooth.
No, it's not a herd. Saber-tooth?
Saber-tooth. Tigers. There we go.
Right.
It's getting late.
Pride.
So, pride.
Pride of saber-tooth tigers. There you go, mate.
Right. Brilliant.
That's what it is.
You know, David, and it's also like combining hakalau. Right? Once you've done the breathing, you go right into hakalau, or hakalau right into breathing into your heart. So you're then in a coherent state. We're not, you know, the beauty about it is the more you practice, the more you can organically combine all of these beautiful things. You don't have to go, oh, I can't do that. That's a limiting belief. Right?
Yeah.
I can do this, and this is why I can do it, because it works with everything I do. Sometimes I do so many different combinations of things, like my chanting in the middle of... I love it. I love it. And if I hadn't learned that, I wouldn't be able to do that here with this person or over here with this person. You know, we can use it all, and we're not so... stuck in our ways. We're open, we're flexible, right? Isn't that part of NLP?
And also how it all ties in with Huna. Like you say, breathing, hakalau,
It's the Lego from which to build a lovely
chanting.
life.
You know, that's what when I bought an M Wave, that's what I used. Those three things. I had a belief that if I heart breathed, went into hakalau, chanted, I would go into coherence. And I did. Which, you know, as I say, the great thing about this is it's on a computer screen, it's being measured neurologically, electronically.
Yeah.
Electronics don't lie. I'm an electronics engineer. I know they don't lie.
And it's repeatable.
And it's repeatable.
That's the thing. You know, it's provable, it's repeatable.
Yeah. So, Debra, great second session. Thank you for that. Now, Debra, if the Performance Partnership Worldwide were to ask you to do a HeartMath training at some point in the future, would you be up for that?
The answer is I would love to. I would be honored, because it would be such an added tool for all of your students and
And also for them personally, let alone if they're working with
Right.
so do I, working with clients. All right, so let's we'll have a conversation about that.
Yes.
We got a deal.
Okay. And so, on that lovely note, so that is something to watch out for. Obviously, in terms of your stuff, we can pop links and stuff like that in the description. So, if you want to find out more about Debra and what she does, then you can do that on the links around this video, or indeed in the description of this podcast, if you're simply listening to our lovely voices. So.
Indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, Debra, for joining us today. It's been an utter pleasure and also enlightening as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm honored.
So, and we will be back with you next week, where I think we're going to be introducing some more guests and looking at how the rubber hits the road when it comes to translating all these wonderful tools and techniques into tangible and tantalizing results within your life.
That's where it is for me. It's like, how do we use these things to create real life tangible results?
Yes.
And that's probably, my electronics background. You don't do anything in electronics if it doesn't work.
No, because otherwise you just end up with like smoking hair.
I've done that, but for different reasons.
So join us next time for more fun, hilarity, and enlightenment. In the meantime, if you have any questions, the email address is podcast@theresultsshow.com. theresultshow.com. In the meantime, it remains only for me to extend very, very warm thanks and warm wishes, of course, given your local ambient temperature, to our lovely guest, Debra Heslin.
Thank you.
And from David and myself, we will see you next time.
On the other side.